Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Run It Back. We are in Run It Back number 11, and I'm actually, on a personal note, very excited for today. So I'm Menelik Fernandez, I'm your host, and for those of you who have not ever listened or watched in to Run It Back previously, basically the concept of the show is we take teams that have played recently in the past year so far has been the framework that we've used, and we run it back, so to speak, where we take a look at their previous games or a particular game, and we look at what worked or what didn't work, and we talk about how a team prepared, and we take it on from one particular team's perspective. So for today, we're taking a look at Drake versus Bradley, and we are very, very fortunate to have somebody who I have loosely so far considered a mentor. He's really taken a lot of time to giving me some great advice and always answer the phone for me, which I think has been awesome. And to his credit, I haven't even mentioned this to him yet, but like when I announced that he was going to be the guest on this show, Coach Blunt, I've literally never heard anybody speak negatively about you. Everybody is like, that's great. Super happy to have him there. Excited. Can't miss it. Have to go ahead and check it out. So we have the assistant coach from Drake, Coach Larry Blunt, joining us. I'm going to give you just a really quick, brief overview of who Coach Blunt is. Collegiate letter winner in football. Coach Blunt has literally coached at every single level in basketball. He was a professional basketball coach with the Oshawa Power up here in Canada. He's been a Division One assistant coach at Canisius and now currently at Drake, a Division II assistant at Shaw, North Carolina, and a Division III assistant at Eastern Mennonite, which is in Virginia. And then, of course, for most of my Canadian friends, there's a few of us on the call here as well. He's probably most well known up here, at least, as being the head coach at Orangeville when Thon Maker and Jamal Murray were there, and was instrumental in helping getting many other athletes placed. So welcome, Coach. I'm very happy to have you today. Hope I did you justice there.
Fernandez, I'll need your Cash App. I don't know if we can send it cross border, but that was a very, very warm welcome. And I really appreciate the kind words and the mentorship both ways, man. I've learned a lot from you and I've followed you from afar, and I've appreciated all of our conversations and having an opportunity to learn from each other and grow with each other. And I thank you for putting this platform together to continue to grow in the game in a place that we really hold dear to our hearts. So thank you so much for having us.
Super happy to have you here, sir. I'll give you guys a little bit of a background just sort of on Bradley versus Drake. Both teams are in the Missouri Valley Conference. They played this year twice before the game we're examining, so twice in the regular season or in conference, so to speak. Game one was December 31st at Bradley, which was a loss for Drake. They lost 80-72. And then game two was at Drake on February 5th, which was a win for them. They won 73-60. And then the game of focus that we were talking about is the March 7th game, which happened at Bradley, which unfortunately ended up being a loss for Drake, 76-66. So just before I ask Coach Blunt sort of what stuck out in his mind, I always like to open this up to a poll to the other coaches that are in here. And just so you kind of get an idea, Coach Blunt, obviously I'm involved with the Rising Coaches Forum, and we get a lot of coaches that duck in and out from Rising Coaches. But what I do for this particular forum is I put up the game and the box score on Rising Coaches, and I send that info to anybody who's not on Rising Coaches that likes to duck in so that they can kind of get an advanced idea as to the matchup and sort of speak on it with a little bit of cognition. So right now, basically all the poll says for anybody who's listening or watching at a later time, can Drake beat Bradley in a rematch? And it looks like we got 100% yes support from Drake's side.
Go Bulldogs.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Love it. All right. So, Coach, let's start here. What sort of things, when you think back upon this game, stick out in your mind right away? What are the first things that pop up And it could be about anything, preparation, matchups, any of that. Where does your mind go originally?
And there's a lot of thoughts. Coach Fernandez initially, the first thought was that was one of the last contests in the NCAA prior to being shut down for COVID.
Right.
And I think we take for granted often the privilege that we have to be around young people and to compete with young people. And I can remember that game. I mean, we play our conference tournament at a neutral site, and we play it in an arena that's really a high level. And just the emotional roller coaster that those tournaments, we had won 2 games prior to that. So that was the 3rd game in 3 days. We beat our conference rival. It's an in-state rivalry that's been unreal with Northern Iowa. They do a really good job. And they actually had beat us pretty convincingly at home, prior to that. So when you and I beat us, and to beat them, just the emotional roller coaster. You win the first game, you beat Illinois State. Then the next, in 24 hours, you got a quick turnaround. You play Northern Iowa, you beat them. And now, we have a ton of fans coming from Des Moines and coming on over to St. Louis. And we're in this game, and it's just a heavyweight fight with a team that we're very evenly matched with. And I just think those things that you take for granted, having a chance to spend so much time with your players pretty much around the clock because you're with them, that's probably what jumps out to me the most beyond even the game.
Yeah, so you talk about hitting the nail on the head as they speak. Like right now, I'm really missing basketball. That would be an understatement. I mean, some of my friends that are in the US are starting to get back. Some of my friends that are here in Canada are starting to get back. But the CCAA, where I coach, Ahmed's on the call, Mike's on the call, Greg's on the call, Mike Adamo's on the call. So there's a few CCAA coaches in here for sure today. But like we're still sort of in flux, and like our athletes haven't really been given anything either. So just like you said, you really do take for granted. I mean, we're going on maybe 5 months of being shut down right now. So obviously it's like, man, I miss those interactions. I miss those day-to-days with the guys for sure. Let me see if I can bring up some things box score wise that are of note, so to speak. One of the things that I took a look at was that when I look at this box score, it almost doesn't make sense to me in terms of modern scoring. And what I mean by that was that they had, and they being Bradley, had 44 points in the first half and only 2 3-point shots. And when you think about the order of operations of shots that we talk about, I mean, everything obviously right at the front of the rim is number 1 now, but number 2 usually is the 3-point shot. And that to me was kind of a big thing that stood out. But, like conversely on the other side, both teams finished with a lot of players in double digits. So Drake had 5 and you guys had 3, I believe. Yeah, 3 guys in double digits. So there was definitely some scoring that was happening here, despite the lack of the 3-pointers in the first half. I can't talk about this game without bringing up Darryl Brown from Bradley. Led the team in scoring with 25. 19 of them were in the first half. This was the second most in a half of his career. The first most in a half of his career was also against you guys. So maybe we could talk about Darryl a little bit and the way that you guys approach game planning for this particular guard.
Well, I mean, that brings up, I guess you throw some salt in some wounds. I mean, Darryl's an all-conference player.
Yeah.
And he had been an all-league player. He's a very, very, I would say he's a guy that kind of scores in bunches. He's a really shifty guard, really fast. And he's one of those guys when he kind of gets some momentum and he sees it go down early at the rim and in transition, I think it really gets him going. But our game plan going in, and again, to that point was they have another senior guard, Nate Cannell, number 25, that shot over 40% from 3. So our plan was to really take him away and also to really try to limit Brown, knowing that those are their, on paper, their best 2 players. Their third best player, Elijah Childs, he had been injured the majority of the season, but he was leading them in scoring prior to being injured. So our game plan was to take those 2 guards away, and I think we got a little bit extended, but to their credit, I mean, I think one of the adjustments with Darryl Brown, we were kind of playing drop coverage. So our bigs were kind of, they put us in pick and roll situations, and we have a 6'11" big that's playing drop. he kind of started getting downhill and he got some of his floaters and some of those things going. So I think that gave him an opportunity early to see it go through and kind of gave him some confidence as the game started.
Very interesting. So, I mean, we've loosely touched on this already in terms of the quick turnaround of the tournament. I mean, you play 3 games in 3 days, basically. One of the things that I noticed early with Darrell Brown was that you guys, and I could show some film really quick here, but you guys played various coverages against him. It didn't look like you were just in drop. So could you speak on a little bit, short amount of turnaround time, which is kind of the premise of this show. What does preparation look like for you guys? I mean, you literally played and got a great win the night before. Are your guys staying up and you're going through film? Are you guys just letting your guys go to bed and you talk about it in a quick shoot in the morning? Or are you relying on the sample size of, hey, we've played them previously, let's just kind of, use what we know worked when we played previously and make some adjustments in game? What sort of is Drake's philosophy, or even your philosophy personally on that?
We started in our standard coverage. I mean, we started the game in drop. That's what we've done all year, and we've been really good at it. We made the adjustment, and I think, to your point of mentioning changing the coverage, we changed from that to really getting up and trying to be a little bit more aggressive at the point of the screen, and hedging to kind of redirect them. But what we typically do, just especially in a short turnaround, is we are really conscientious of our principles. We tend to not be a team that's going to say, okay, this game we're going to do this game we're going to do that, but we will make subtle adjustments, like in game, making the adjustment to jump up and hedge a little bit more. And as you can see kind of in the first half, that's how we started the game in our drop. That one went down and it kind of got him going. And I think that was the beginning of it for him, kind of, seeing it go through the bucket a little bit.
I would agree with you. Did we miscategorize one here? Yeah. So I think my video got a little bit out of order there. I apologize. But there's the ball defender was the one that I was noticing. So you're noticing they're going over. On this, they're going under. So there's just about 4 or 5 clips here that I'll let them run through just to reinforce the point that you're saying, game time decisions. The big thing for me is, like, we're very similar in our conference type tournament where it's a quick turnaround. And I'm always very interested in hearing what the teaching points are for, like, so you're under on them there.
And our rules, I mean, our rules, we kind of stay very true to who we are. And our rules is that we want our guards to get right to the screen and then they can make a decision at the last second. Part of that is because they moved our 3-point line back to where everyone in Canada shoots, to the FIBA 3-point line.
Right.
So from us, and if you look at the NCAA 3-point shooting percentage, it dropped. And I think I will argue that as a result of that, kids are shooting a little bit further back. So for them, our what we've worked on from day one in the summer going into the season was that our guys get right to the line, to the point of the screen, as you can see right now, Roman Penn, and then he can make a decision at the last second. And we don't want them to show their hand early, but that gives them an opportunity to put themselves in a position that they can, that gives them an opportunity to, at the last second, make a decision over or under. And to the point, this is a perfect spot where you have it stopped. And it's great to see a bunch of friends. I hope I don't want to overtalk this. So Mike and Ahmad, I've gotten to know you guys really well. Mike, I appreciate you helping us get the power rolling, back in the days in Oshawa. So it's always good to see some friends. But just in this scenario here with us, Brown's coming off the ball screen. We got Boyer, number 1, setting it. If you look here to the left, Cannell is number 25. We wanted to, because he shot the basketball so well, we typically weren't extended, but a subtle change that we made in this game because of our respect for him was that we played what we call touch. So in this game, I think Brown, it gave him an opportunity. And again, we're playing the percentages. Right now, Nate Cannell's a senior. He shot over 40%. We don't want him to get going. So it's, I think in the game, those are the subtle adjustments, but we typically will stick true to our principles, but we will tweak 1 or 2 things. And that was an adjustment that we made, just guarding him, face guarding him to try to prevent him from getting going.
Awesome. I appreciate it. The one thing that I just picked up on that you said that was kind of Part of my question, though, was that you guys allow your ball handler to make the decision at the line of the screen. I think that's really intriguing. Can you very loosely and very briefly, I suppose, touch on how you teach that in practice, like all season long? So, like, what are the keys that you're giving your ball defender to inform that decision?
Well, especially in the drop, we're in a situation where if they're into the ball, and that will be the thing, if as we watch film with our players, if we were to put that back there, we would ask the guy guarding the ball to get more into it and to engage more. And then we do it in practice every day where we have a drill, and it's a very simple drill where we have 4 guys around a 3-point line, and essentially the ball handler is in the corner. The guard, if you can imagine, there's another offensive guy. Let me see if I have a board here.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Because I'm not smart enough to explain this, so let's see if we can do this. So essentially the drill is set up this way. All right. And this guy guarding the basketball comes off it. He's trailing. Can everyone see this?
Yeah, you're good, Coach.
Awesome. So as he's coming off, all he does is he, at the last second, makes a decision. Comes off, same thing. He can fight over and go under. Same thing all the way around. So that's a drill. That's a simple drill that we do every day. But it one, forces them to get into the basketball, and then 2, at the last second, they make a decision. And we use small drills like that, break down, and then we'll build it up as we get into, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, where we start going live. But that's how we kind of start building it.
So for anybody who's listening, just very simple drill. Like if you don't have the opportunity to visualize it, just basically you get a reverse and you keep working on it back and forth, side to side, working on getting into the guys. Now, what is your personal philosophy on teaching varied coverages throughout the year so that you have the ability to like implement them in particular games? Or are you more of a proponent of teaching, like you said, your standardized coverage is the drop, and just working with what you do? Because this is a constant debate that has been happening on this show so far, is that like, hey, we're going to do what we do and we're going to do that well, versus, hey, this particular matchup warrants that coverage versus a different coverage, and we need to be able to do everything at least to a sufficient level. What's your personal viewpoint on that kind of stuff?
I think it depends on your team. I mean, your personnel. Last year we had a 6'11" sophomore. I mean, a lot of people would say 7 foot, so a 7-footer. So I'll go with 7-footer. That's a little bit sexier.
There you go.
He led us in scoring. He led us in rebounds, and he was top 5 in the country in blocks. So for us, we wanted to keep him on the floor 30, 35, 36 minutes of a 40-minute game. And we thought that we could protect him more by keeping him in the drop. And he was great at the drop because he was so big and so long. So for us, we thought that would be our base coverage. But what we wanted to do was to be able to have a change up. So as this game progressed, we went to our change up. That was to get up and jump and hedge and kind of arm show. Right. And then we had a third change of pace, which would be switching. So I think, the year before that, we had the runner-up player of the year. He was a defensive player of the year, but he was much more athletic and bouncy. So our base coverage was jumping up to show. So I'm a proponent of, I do think you want to have something that you're really good at based on your personnel, but I also think you want to be able to be in a position where you can, do some varied things and to be in a position where you can have a change up. If we didn't have something to as a change up to Brown, he would have scored 60. So I do think it's some value to having multiple coverages.
For sure. I would agree with you personally. Matt, jump in. Just so everybody who's listening knows, Matt's ridiculing me. He says I talk too much, basically.
No, you're good, man. Hey, Coach. Matt Dickman here. I have a question about the running into the point of the screen. Do you ever find that your on-ball defender isn't necessarily guarding the ball in that aspect? And like, do you have problems with ghost screens because you're kind of not guarding the ball, it seems like?
Coach Dickman, great observation. And we spent a lot of time with our players watching film. And that was one of the things that we really harped on this year. And we really made a concerted effort over the off season to pull a lot of those and show them. We're supposed to be into the ball. And in theory, we really shouldn't get screened, but we for whatever reason, we did not get into the basketball like we should have. And the go screens, I think those are, I mean, it's something. We're an offensive team. I'll be completely honest. Like, my boss is an offensive guy. He likes to score. We have been in the top third of the league in pace. And so those go screens, they create so much indecision. I think they're so good. We use them a lot. And I mean, those things are hard. That's why everyone does them so much, in my opinion. Great question.
Just to follow up there, based on the same topic about guarding the ball, at what level are you encouraging Robbins to challenge the ball? Because there was a number of times coming off that drop coverage where he didn't challenge the ball, resulted in a layup or a wide open jumper, and he just, again, was complacent and didn't seem to be challenging the ball at times.
We have a rule. I mean, a lot of the NBA guys, they use veer switching or fly switching. The rule is typically once you get to the logo, then the big should take it, and then the guard should essentially swap off and take the big, if you can visualize that. You know, in that game, that's a hard thing. I mean, they're big, not Boya, but I just drew a blank. Not Boya, but their second big's name is Kochbar. I don't know what, number 12.
Number 12.
So
first play of the game was to him. To me, it looked like they wanted to establish him early, and then they kind of went away from it a little bit. But yeah,
certainly. In his first shot, I mean, he hit two shots that kind of rimmed around. So Liam's deal, our big, is he's in a pickle. Are you gonna let this big come in full speed downhill at you? Or are you gonna take? And that's the indecision. You know, as a big man, you want to win your matchup, and that's what we struggle with. I think we all battle with that, trying to do what we have to do to win and also win the individual matchups. But what's supposed to happen is that guard, if he gets hung up, Liam's supposed to step up and take him, and then that guard will veer back and take the big. That's what should happen.
Yeah, they did that once. And then to follow back to the same question, with the guards making that decision in that pick and roll, there are a number of times they're getting picked basically at the free throw line, and they still went under, instead of challenging the ball or following some of these shooters that are 36, 40% from the three-point line. Or at any point, are you encouraging them to go over the top? Because I think in the first half, it was about 90% of the screens were under.
Well, they took shots that we wanted. I mean, you know, I think a lot of modern-day basketball is saying we want to give up twos. And, you know, for them to take as many mid-range pull-up twos as they were taking, that's, for us, that's a win. And when we played them, you know, they have had the same team. That formula has yielded success. They start making a couple of those. You get a couple easy buckets in transition. You see it go through. And, you know, for us, again, it wasn't the three ball that beat us. It was more the mid range. And then again, we made a couple adjustments. But, you know, we want to give our guys the freedom. I do think the thing that we could have done better watching it, and that's something that as coaching staff, we have to do a better job. We had to do a better job getting into the ball earlier so that we could get to those screens.
Coach, I would almost go so far as say that this game was actually won in the mid-range. When I was watching it, like, you know, I'm like, yeah, you can't beat me on that shot though. Yeah, you can't beat me on that shot though. And then it starts getting to a point where it's like, maybe we can get beat on that shot today. And to Mike's question about the contest from the big, I kind of wish Jimmy was on here. Coach Blunt, I don't know if you've met Jimmy Oakman before, but he's fairly regular on here, and like he talks a lot about drop coverage and wanting to encourage that shot. So they always go over with the rear contest and, you know, 15, 18-foot shot. All right, go ahead and take it. And, you know, unfortunately in this scenario, it just seems like they were good enough to make a high enough percentage type deal. Let's talk a little bit about first half to second half adjustment. So you're going into half and your score is 44-35. So you're down 9, and they have not hit a tremendous amount of threes. Like I said before, the box score almost didn't make sense to me. And you're coming back out, and in my opinion, it looked like, and I'll show some video just to kind of back up my opinion, but in my opinion, it looked like you guys were now trying to establish your big. Is this true? Is this something that you guys were talking about? Like was Liam an area of focus for the second half, or did it just sort of work out that like, hey, we're just going to punch this because it looks open a lot of the time?
Well, Liam was our best player. I mean, you know, so I think everyone in the arena in our state knows that the ball needs to go to him.
It's got to go there.
Certainly. So, I mean, we definitely, and to their, I mean, they're one of the better defensive teams in our league, and they have two really, really good bigs. We made shots, but I think more importantly, we got some stops, and it allowed us to get up and down and run a little bit more. And that was, kind of the difference. Some of those mid-range shots, and a lot of it was because we started getting up and hedging. That slowed the game down, and it allowed us to get out and do what we do best, is run.
So just anybody like listening in later, I'm just showing some clips of Liam Robbins, getting deep position, getting offensive rebounds, doing work down there, doing the work that a big man should be doing. And I was just, as I said, wondering if it was the area of focus. You get to the open ball screen here, he rolls in and you guys punch the ball. And then the next follow-up question to that is, what sort of post counters are you guys teaching / encouraging? Because on this clip, you'll see they dig down and they get the ball out from him. And I'm just wondering, are you burning your worst shooter? Where are you cutting from? Like, what are you guys teaching?
We like to keep 4 guys on the floor that can really shoot. I mean, right. So we really, we encourage our guys to really space out, and then we will what we call quick screens and split screens. We'll go penny in for guys or we'll cut off it. But the majority of the time, because we shoot it so well, we just encourage them to stay spread out. People, I think, in the league, we've been in the top 2 or 3 our 2 years here with 3-point shooting, making, and percentages. So most guys, because we stay so spaced, they stay attached normally. And that's what allows him to operate in there as well. We don't want them really cutting on top of them, per se, but we will allow them to penny in.
Very interesting.
And a lot of this, with our offense most of it's not scripted. I mean, we play a lot of freelance motion.
Right.
You can freeze, and you can just kind of see, like right now, like we he cut on top of them. We would have preferred for these guys to kind of stay spaced, because now if again, you can see how much attention he's garnering. They got 4 guys that can touch him.
Yeah.
If we stay spaced, it gives us a chance for step in kick outs, and that's what we would prefer in a perfect world.
So, I mean, you're reading my mind. You're a question ahead all the time. I love it, Coach. When you are unscripted, so to speak, like throughout the season in your practices, are you doing guided drills to try and teach penetration type principles or passing type principles? And if the answer is yes, how often are you interrupting the flow of practice to be like, hey, instead of this, consider that? Or how often are you allowing them to self-correct, so to speak?
Well, I'm going to bring out the old board, because
I love it.
I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, and the video is oftentimes priceless. So this is somewhere in the middle. So a lot of the drill work that we will do. Now, I will say this was my second year, getting ready to start year 3. When the first year I was here, our first 3 weeks of practice are chaotic. I mean, there's balls going all over the place. We're turning it over. We're running out of bounds, and we don't. So, I mean, one of the biggest premises of how we play is our pace. And I think if you ask anyone in our league what they're the most concerned about, is just our transition, how fast we run and go. But we do a lot of drill work that involves 3 offensive guys, and you can get to it various ways. You can get the handoffs, you can do it. But essentially, the premise of it is we call this a 1 down, where a guy drives it, kicks it 1 down, or we call this a 1 up. So a lot of the premise, and then we have things that we call, and just some terminology, this would be like a sun's cut or a burn cut. So what we try to do is we try to break it down, and we give them various things that they can do in games. So if I drive it and I get in here and we encourage them playing on 2 feet, and then we'll try to teach them, okay, this, you get on 2 feet and now we can get this. Or we call it a C up. A guy can drive and you can hand it up. So we won't tell them, okay, we're going to run 22 X hook, Y under, Z circle. I'm not smart enough to remember that. But what we will do is we give them concepts out of it, so that as we're playing, you're going to drive it in there. We're going to look for this cut, a burn cut, or we're going to drive it in there. So we try to give them more terminology than just, concrete. This is what you're going to do, if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I'm actually a similar type coach, I would believe, where it's more small-sided games, and then once in a while I will try to guide stuff. Just to revisit the second half of that question, like I guess this kind of touches on. I heard this question yesterday in one of Caleb Koopa's Zooms that he was doing. Do you like a messy or a clean practice? Was the question, and obviously it's going to be messier at first, but the second half of my question was like, how often are you interrupting and correcting versus how long are you trying to allow them to achieve flow and play through mistakes? Like, what's your personal philosophy, or what is Drake's philosophy that you've learned since being there on that?
We do a lot of control, I would say 2 or 3 trips, and we won't interrupt those 2 or 3 trips. But then at the end of the conclusion of those 3 trips, maybe a lot of times it will be offense, defense, and maybe 4.
Right.
Then we will say, okay, well, this happened, this happened, this happened. What did you see? But I think what we're really, really good at is after practice, breaking it down and sitting down with guys and saying, okay, you had an opportunity, for example, to burn cut out of the corner. Your defender turned his head. He went and he, had his back to you. Our big, for example, may have been, double teamed or trapped. This was an opportunity for this. Or he pitched it out to you. You had an opportunity at a 1-up. And we'll try to go back and film review and show that. Or you had an opportunity at a 1 down. You took a bad shot. Look at this. If you would have done this, we would have gotten this. So I think it's a combination of letting them play multiple trips where you're just not stopping it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think we spend a lot more time individually with guys showing video because we think they can learn much better in that setting where there's not as much pressure and they're not being, yelled at. We think we can get more accomplished in that setting.
Do you film all of your practices, Coach?
We film everything. If it's workouts, practices, we like to say the eye in the sky doesn't lie.
There you go.
Yes. And a lot of guys, and we have a Canadian young man, Okai Jam Goose. He's made the biggest strides from the beginning of last year to this year. And now we've gotten to the point when you watch film with him, you can say, okay, instead of us saying, okay, you see this? Now he's like, okay, well, okay, tell me what you saw. Well, I stepped with the wrong foot or, and that's where we want to get to the point where they can start telling us. But yes, everything's filmed. We show it all. We make it a priority for our program to be able to, and player development to show them.
Do the same coaches always deal with the same players, or is it anybody can get it with anybody, so to speak, with the film?
We try to keep it a consistent voice. We all have 3 or 4 guys that are quote unquote our guys.
Right.
So that I'm not telling them to shoot left, right, and someone else is telling them right, left. But what we will do is we will meet as a staff and say, okay, I'm just using Okai because he's Canadian. We may say, okay, Okai made the most threes in practice. Like we stat everything as well. So for a whole season of practice, he made the most threes and he shot the highest percentage. So
right.
From us, like all of us in the staff meeting, we're saying, okay, well, we need to get him more shots. Like he needs to be more shot rich. So we all will have collaboration on what we want him to work on, but one person gives the message.
I love it. Guys, if anybody has anything, feel free to jump in. If not, I want to move into your scouting in this scenario. We touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but I was hoping we could go a little bit more in depth. Obviously, this is a team that you split games with during conference play, and you got a one-day turnaround. And I asked the question, like, what do you guys do a night before, day of, so to speak? What would a scout typically look like for you in conference versus in a game like this? So how many games are you watching, say, the second time you've played these guys versus when you're playing them in your conference tournament type deal? And does it become more condensed? What is added in? What is subtracted? All of that.
Great question. I think we all have a different approach, and we split our games right down the middle. So essentially all of us in the conference, we have 9 teams that we play against. So we all get 3 teams that we're responsible for.
Right.
So my personal approach to it is I always will watch 5 games, the 5 games directly preceding us playing them. and I like to think we have access to all sorts of stats. I mean, it's unreal. Like, I mean, we can tell you how many times a coach stands up and sits down based on the stats.
Yeah.
But I typically like to watch 5 games prior to looking at any of it. And then I like to go back and break down based on the stats, see how that kind of correlates. Because I think stats can be, if you're just looking at stats, I think they can sometimes be misleading. You can get it to represent whatever you want. And then after that, I'll go through and we'll look at this is my personal approach to it. I'll look at the team that held them to the lowest points per game. So I'll go through the entire season and I'll say, okay, well, these 3 teams, they really were effective in stopping them. So I'll go on Synergy and I'll just pull up all of their defense and I'll just watch, okay, well, for example, someone when they played Bradley, I'll just use this as an example, they really took their big and they almost double teamed Brown. So the guard fought over the type and they just made him get off it. And then I'll look at that and I'll just find ways, for example, Bradley had a zone, they play a 3-2 zone. And one of the teams that attacked them, they did a really good job of, if you throw it to the high post, then the 4-man would come up and take it. So we realized that if we threw it to the 4, then, we could overload a side, and they ran out of people. So we got step in, corner 3, corner 3, corner 3. So for me, I'll look at those things. Who had the most success with them when they were guarding them, and I'll try to just watch what they did, so we're not reinventing the wheel. And then conversely, if someone does something that really affected them or that took advantage of what they do defensively, then I'll try to pull those things. So 5 games, and then I'll look at the stats, and then I'll go back and watch who was effective against them on offense and defense.
So then from there, how do you funnel to what you're actually presenting to the guys? Like, do sets make it in? Do you spend time on slobs and blobs? It's like, and before you answer, Coach, I appreciate you and every other coach on here. I appreciate you guys because we've all done, like, we watch a lot of film. Right, we watch a lot of film, right? So like what the guys on the floor are getting, they get a very tailored, tapered approach to try and streamline it so that they can be efficient and succinct with what they have to do. But we watch a lot of film, we get a lot of tendencies, so I appreciate you, Coach, and the time you invest in that for sure.
I agree. I want to echo that. I mean, I don't think people know all the early mornings and late nights that go into this.
Yeah.
I don't know how you look so young with putting all that time in, Coach. But I mean, for us, obviously I want to have that information because if my boss asks, I would rather have put the time in and not need it than to need it and have not put the time in. But what we typically do presentation wise is we do a 3-edit split, especially for league play. So normally we play either Tuesday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Sunday, somewhere in that split. So you have 3 to 4 days of prep. So the first edit will show the best player, they get 4 clips. And then all the rest of the players, they only get 2 or 3 clips. And we show this is what they do best. So Brown, he would get a clip of driving it, splitting the pick and roll. He'll get one probably shooting behind one. He'll get one shooting a deep 3. So we try to show a personnel edit based on, okay, this is what makes him good. This guy's a shooter, this guy's a driver, this guy's an offensive rebounder, whatever, 4 on the best player and then 2 or 3 on the support, the rest of the guys.
So Coach, does everybody get everything? Or like, for instance, if, Coach Daniels is guarding Coach Blunt, am I really only showing him predominantly Coach Blunt stuff? Like, how does that work for you guys?
We switch 4 ways, so everyone sees everyone, especially in transition. Different guys get matched up on different guys. So everyone sits through the edits. Normally, we try to keep them under 3 minutes because I may have the shortest attention span of anyone. So after 3 minutes, I'm kind of a lost cause. But, we show everyone just so they know. And a lot of times, I mean, when we veer switch, we might have our 5-man on Nate Cannell. So he needs to know, okay, well, if I'm switched on him, he likes to pull up from 3. So I need to, really push up in him and make him put it on the deck. So we show it to everyone. That's the long way of saying that.
Amazing. So I love that. I know a lot of coaches that don't like doing it that way. They just want it succinct to each player. In this particular instance with this conference tournament game, what can you remember at all what happened specifically? Because like we've talked about previously so far, you have the 3 games in 3 days and your opponent is not solidified. You have to get through. So it could be this team or it could be that team. So like, how much preparation are you doing broad and versus, you know, specific narrow type deal? Like, how early were you finding out that you guys were playing Bradley? And then from there, what's that process look like?
Well, for us, you get 3 teams in the league. So you've already done the work to prepare for them for your 2 regular season contests. The way we typically do it is whoever has that team during the year, you get them. So once our game ends, or even prior to our game, we all sit courtside and you're working on, because you know you're going to play one of the 2 teams.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there live scouting, and you obviously have everything that you've prepared. We typically have a week between our last conference game and when we leave for the tournament. So in that week, you're organizing all your thoughts, you're having all your clips. Like, we have game notes. Like, I think in this game, if I'm not mistaken, I'm kind of looking back at it, we gave up 17 shots that if they made 17 shots that if they took and they made them, we were going to be happy with. And that game, it just happened to, you know, so when we look back at it, all of that's statted, and I can go back and show our guys. And then they made 9 shots that we didn't want to give up. So we made them do what we wanted to do, and they just, you know, we'll tip our caps to them because they made plays. But in that short turnaround, you have to be prepared with all you have done in the season and have it organized, because basically you're getting 12 or 13 hours to be able to put it together and be able to present that to the team.
Right.
You know, based on what you've already done and what you saw essentially in that contest.
So I would assume then, sorry, Mike, I got you in a second. I would assume then basically nobody ever throws away a scout ever for you guys. You got a very detailed, large hard drive of everything on the computer.
Well, this is the GOAT.
There you go.
These are, I think, 3 or 4 terabytes. I mean,
I got you right there.
these are the GOAT. And I mean, we keep everything. It's really, and we have a great support staff of video guys. I mean, I think Okai can speak to this. There's no secrets in college basketball. Like, there's none. Like, we have synergy. We have, I mean, the amount of stats that you have access to is unreal. It's really incredible, the stuff you can have access to if you really want it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the bigger challenges that we have in the CCAA is, like, this year we're now potentially looking at getting on Synergy, and obviously I use Synergy for my clips, but that's just through somebody being very, very kind and lending me their password, so to speak. But, like, you know, we used Huddle last year, but our games weren't uploaded for, you know, a day, 2 days, 3 days type deal. So if we're in this kind of tournament and we're not capable of getting there and sitting courtside, like you mentioned, we're not really going to have a very good scout unless we had played that team earlier in the year. And, like, you know, Mike was at George Brown. He'll tell you, like, once you get into crossovers in the CCAA, you're playing the entire other half of the division. So you haven't seen them during the year. So it's challenging. It's challenging for sure. We got a special guest here. So say hello, please.
Hello.
There you go.
Mike, the real star here.
There you go. Mike, you had a question, I think. Jump in.
Yeah, just to follow up based on the adjustments you guys are saying you're making, what adjustments are you making at half? Like, what are you telling your players individually versus players as a whole versus having a discussion with the coaches, for instance, about, like, spacing or how you guys changed up the pick and roll, or even the post shot selection where he caught the ball? You guys called a lot more misdirections or ghost screens and got him a lot more empty catches versus he was trying to get high post catches and just work his way down. So what discussions are you having at the levels during that halftime?
Well, a lot of the discussions, you know, I think sometimes, and that to your point, like, stats can be misleading. So, you know, with us, like, we want to show them, and I was one of the defensive guys on our staff, so we wanted to show them that, wait a minute, like, what we're doing is working. They made the shots that we want to give up. No one ever wins 0-0. Like, I think that's the miss. That's in basketball. No one's going to do something offensively that they think will not work. And I've never seen anyone win 0-0. Like, everyone's going to score. So for us, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think with 6 minutes to go in the game, it was a 3-point game. And the only adjustment that we wanted to make was, instead of dropping, to get up and show on the screen, because, you know, again, he got going a little bit, and that's part of it. So a lot of times now, if it was a scenario where we look and as I'm charting a game, I do for every score, I do a red, a green, and a yellow on the possession. So even if they take a layup and they miss it and it's a great shot, that's a red, that's a bad. So we need to make an adjustment. But if you look at the stat sheet and you see that there's a whole lot of greens, that's the shots that we want them to take. If they make them, then we're going to slap them on the butt and go back. So in this game, there wasn't a ton of adjustments. We just got stops. And the one adjustment that we made was jumping up and hedging on the ball screen instead of playing a drop so we could slow Brown down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then just to cover the offensive piece of it, what are you telling, because I saw the major adjustment with your big about what plays you were calling or where he was catching it. Is that made with just coaches and call selection, or are you having that discussion with the player, and to what extent?
We didn't change anything really per se offensively with him catching the ball. I mean, he took good shots in the first half. He just, again, if you look at the first possession, he got a deep touch. It rimmed out. So for us, I mean, I think what makes it challenging to scout us and the way we play is you just never know what's coming because it's so random. We're not a team that's going to say, okay, well, we're going to run a cross screen and throw the ball on the box. Now you can scout that. You can say, you know what, okay, I'm going to keep my guard in there and I'm going to wedge up with my forearm and I'm going to stay and then we're going to sit on top of him. You can do that. But if now you got him picking and rolling and then he's going back up and he's and we call it a ghost screen where he sets and he dives to the block, or like now he's shockering or what have you. I mean, the random aspect of it for us allowed him to be one of the best bigs in the league without us saying, okay, we need to run 25 sets to get him the ball right here. So for us, that's how we play. That's it. It might be a scenario where we see, they're doubling on the block and they're trapping the post. And now we may run a play where we dive a big from the corner because that guy's trapping and now you can throw a lob. Like we may make an adjustment that way, but those are counters from just plays more so than, okay, going into halftime, we want to throw him the ball on the block. We never will say that. We'll allow our guys to have the freedom to play.
I like that, Coach. I like it a lot. I like giving players framework, et cetera. And like you said, it makes you quite a bit harder to scout because there's definitely teams where I'll look at film and be like, I don't know what the rules are that they're operating on really right here. It looks like it's randomization. So like now we got to go matchup based scout and try and see if we can cater to certain weaknesses, et cetera. I had a question just really, really quickly on terminology. When you're saying show, you mean you're big at the line of the screen or like a hard hedge, like above, shocking, whatever you want to call it? What is show to you in terminology?
We do different things. In this case, we wanted him, because the guard was fast, we wanted him to get his bottom foot above the heels of the guy that he was guarding. So almost putting, and essentially the easiest way I can describe this, get your numbers parallel to the sideline to redirect them and not let them get downhill.
It's interesting because, obviously I'm dealing quite a bit more with U.S. coaches lately, just being involved with rising coaches, et cetera. But the terminology for certain things becomes so different. And it's like, hey, man, I know basketball fairly well. Like, I know what you're talking about, but like, what do you mean by that a lot of the time? So it's simple things sometimes like that I get caught on. There is one particular set that I want to know how you scouted for, what you guys were trying to do against it, and if it even made it into your scout. So I run a lot of Spain stuff or stack stuff, whatever you want to call it, and I'll show four clips, I believe, of what's in here, and they're long. I'm sorry I didn't trim them down, but basically, for anybody who's listening later, a Spain set is a screen-the-screener type action. Usually the first screen will be facing the rim, and usually it occurs in the center of the floor, but there's all kinds of variations that exist. And just like here, basically I saw a lot of ball screen, flare screen, step-up screen, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just wondering what you guys so he misses the flare there, but like, how did you guys prepare for this? And you mentioned before that you were switching 1 through 4. Were you trying to not switch on some of these? Like, what was your philosophy on this particular set? Because I like this, and full disclosure, the guys that are in my conference expect to see some of this action this year.
Well, what we did, and we messed it up here. If you were the first one, you go back, what our plan was to switch it. And if you can recognize it early enough in the first clip, we did it what our plan was. So our plan here is to switch, freeze. So now we're switching and it's dead. So a lot of people get caught up when you're trying to fight over it, and especially, when this big really screens them. So Jay Sean is Canadian as well, 22.
Hey-o.
But that was our plan going into it, was to kill it by switching on the front end of it. And then the second one, you can see Noah messes it up because we don't call it out and identify it.
Right.
And again, in the first, we stayed in drop. But on this one, it's supposed to be the same thing. He's supposed to recognize it. Garrett's supposed to take it, but now we get hung up and now we're in trouble.
Right.
And that's the shots that he, got going on. Like that's what we want him to take.
He actually, in my opinion, should have stopped at the 3-point line there.
He shot the one that when you look at this, and again, the stats can be misleading, but if he's going to take that one off the bounce, we'll live with that one.
Right. So they get set up in it again here. And so like real traditional, if you guys can see my cursor, like I run a lot of Spain where your top guy's above the 3-point line facing the rim. There's a guy on the nail. We call him the nail guy. But here it's the ball screen and the flare screen. So when you're actually getting this switch here, do you find that a lot of guys, let's say on their team in particular, are good enough to make this diagonal pass to the open shooter to the opposite slot?
Again, that's scouting report. Zero is a transfer, and he didn't shoot a great percentage from 3. Right. So, for us, and he's a very good player. I don't, in no means is that a slight, but for us now in this situation, again, just based on the shooters, we would stay attached if 25 would have been in that corner. But that was a scouting report deal based on the fact that he's not a great shooter, so we stood him in the lane.
What I liked about this one was like they ran a bit of a variation, obviously. So they blast the corner guy and, they try to flip back and then get into the action from there. And you guys, hard hedged, blitzed him, and he ends up turning over the ball, right? Last play before the half type deal. So obviously an in-game adjustment that happened there, but I'm curious about this stack set and if it made your scout and, what you had decided to do. And obviously you had touched on it and said the idea was to switch the first one and play from there type deal. The switching was dead, but I really liked that action. And I thought it was really intriguing to see. The other big one that I saw a lot of was the floppy set. And did you guys, did you do walkthroughs on either of them in this tournament, or were you still relying previously?
Yes, we typically pick 3 to 5 plays to cover. Floppy was definitely one of the ones they ran at a ton.
Right.
They ran a lot of the screen, the slice, the diagonal back screen, screen to screener.
Yeah.
So it was maybe 3 to 5 plays that we walked through. That last Spain was not. We switched, I think, the last minute of the first half to hedging in the last timeout, the last media timeout. I think he may have had 14 up until that point, and we weren't going to let him continue to get going. But the 4 that we really covered, if I remember correctly, was one, the diagonal back screen to screener 1. I know we covered the floppy stuff, and we covered the Spain stuff on switch, and those were 3 that I can remember off the top of my head that we covered.
Right on. Appreciate that. Matt, did you have a question? You want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, Coach, what are your teaching points on switches?
Oh, great question. Our switches, we want to be really aggressive. We use the word pounce. So when, we want that guy to really aggressively take it and almost redirect him. And we call it pouncing.
Yeah. What about the guy coming off the ball?
The guy coming off the ball has to fight underneath as quickly as he can so that he doesn't get slipped. And we work on that. And I don't know if you could see the board that we have. We work on that drill as well. So when we do the same thing where they're going over and under, the next time we do it, we have, we have 4 offensive players around the key. I don't know if can you see the board?
Yeah.
I can. You're good. Yeah.
Okay. So the next time we do that same drill, the first time we get 1 guard. All right. And then the second one, everybody can see this?
Yep.
John Beeline uses this. I get yelled at in our office because everyone in the Midwest uses a squeaky board, but I'm not smart enough to follow it. So I like the 3D kind of deal, the animation. So same exact drill. This guy comes off it. He's setting a ball screen. So these guys don't move. They're stationary. He's guarding it. and we teach him pounce and he has to fight underneath. So the same drill when we're working on our switching, he comes off, he aggressively pounces it and takes it, and he's got to get underneath. And then the same thing in the corner. So we can work on our switching, and we can work on our getting to the screen and getting over and under in the same breakdown drill. And we normally do 2 minutes of one and then 2 minutes of the other. So everyone gets a quick 2 reps before we start practice.
Coach, I would argue that you're more intelligent for recognizing how you learn and utilizing a board that caters to your style of learning, because so much of what we do is just like recognizing who learns in what manner and how to reach them. So I would just
tell my wife that.
Hey, I'll send you the recording afterwards, and you could be like, there it is. Coach says I'm smarter. There you go.
Your cash out keeps going up and up and up and up and up and up.
You're saying flattery will get me everywhere in life is what you're saying, right?
I really appreciate it.
On that switch, the guy that is coming off the ball, do you teach anything like hand-to-hand combat-wise as to like what they're doing? Are there particular points on the body that they need to get their hands to, or are you just saying be quick, be smart, and anticipate what's going to happen and get underneath?
Well, a lot of it's a twofold deal. One, I think the pounce is the biggest part of it, because if he really pounces and aggressively does it, even if that guy does slip and he's open, it's hard to make the play because we're so aggressive going to get him. The guy getting underneath, we're just telling him you have to just we call it getting on and getting off the ball. Right. So he has to get off the ball as quickly as he can, and there's no real, teaching point to say, okay, get to his right, cheek or his left. Like, it's none of those things. It's just get underneath as quickly as you
just
can.
be good enough.
But the pounce is the key. The pounce is the key.
Be aggressive, be assertive, as they would say. Coach, short of anybody else having any other questions for Coach Blunt, I think I want to be respectful of your time. So Ahmed, do you have something?
Yeah. Coach Larry, thank you so much for doing this. Amazing. So I think we've talked about this before, but I might as well put it on the video here. How do you guys teach closing out? It's been a discussion, every Friday almost. So how do you guys teach closing out?
Great question. And that's another drill that we do a ton. I think everyone does those drills. For us, especially being a pack line team, our rules are sprint to his feet. Don't chop your feet. We want to take away threes. And our goal, and is really simple, is don't get beat baseline regardless. So we're really sprinting to his feet, but you're sprinting to wherever you have to get to keep him from going baseline. Because in theory, in the pack, if I'm sprinting to his feet and he drives to the middle, it should be somebody that's getting off the ball, that's standing right there, so that he should be running into. So no chops. We throw a stick hand, what we call, and that stick hand would be, and always the way I can remember it is the hand that you would be denying with, that's your stick hand. If that makes sense. If you're playing denial defense, which we play gap, but throw that stick hand and sprint to his feet, and we want to make him put it on the deck and take one dribble.
Are you forcing weak hand, neutral, or corner baseline?
No baseline. No, wherever you are, if you're on the left side, then you're going to force them right. If you're on the right side, you force, like, whatever you have to do. In theory, and again, a lot of the pack line teams, if you get beat baseline, you might as well just come walk to the bench. Like,
right.
It's as simple as that.
A nice warm seat over here for you.
That'll get you taken out the game regardless. It's simple. No, don't worry about it. And again, like I know, I think Coach Fernandez sent the clip with Dave Smart, like, great coach. I have a lot of respect for how they do the weekend, defense, and they have their principles with it, and a lot of it, I would imagine, is scouting report. With us, it's simple. If you get beat baseline, whether they drive it baseline, whether they drive it on a closeout baseline, whether they get refused in pick and roll baseline, just come on, sit on over here, young fella. We'll let somebody else do it for a little bit.
Sounds good to me. Anybody else? Anything? Amazing stuff. Coach Blunt, let me just wind it down real quickly. I'm going to give a big thank you to the Rising Coaches Network for continuing to support me in this creative endeavor. Next week, we have Lance Westbrook from Houghton coming in. We're going to talk about Houghton versus Sage from Houghton's perspective, and that is a D3 school in upstate New York. For my Canadian friends, if you don't know, Lance and I actually worked camp together last year, so we've got a bit of a relationship. I really like the guy as a coach. He's very professional in the way that he carries himself and has great knowledge. And Coach Blunt, as I said, you continue to be just like a guiding light for me. I really, really appreciate everything that you're doing, and the way that you have helped Canada basketball is just incredible to me. I mean, like helping put Orangeville on the map, and then after, pursuing your career at Canisius and now Drake, continuing to remain in touch with all the guys who are doing stuff up here and continuing to help the game is absolutely incredible. Really, really appreciate you, and keep doing what you're doing. Please obviously reach out if there's anything that I could ever do to help. To all the other coaches that are on here, and many of you are here, almost every week. I really, really appreciate you guys and the feedback that you bring and the time that you spend to prepare and have, insightful questions that really make you rethink the game. Love it. And I think that's basically it. Coach Blunt, appreciate you.
Coach Fernandez, thank you so much for having me. And, again, I appreciate what you're doing to grow the game and providing this platform. And I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, just thank everyone in Canada. I came up 6-7 years ago, 8 years ago, man, time's flying, with just the vision of trying to find myself in this basketball world. And I'm very grateful, because I know I would not be pursuing and chasing my dreams if it wasn't for everyone in Canada. I met my wife there. The guys that we had, I think we had 30 Division I players and 5 NBA players in that 3 years at Orangeville. Remarkable. So a lot of lives were changed, but I tell those guys all the time, and I sincerely mean it. Like, I'm sincerely in debt to everyone in that country, because you guys took me in as your own, and I just want to say thank you.
Appreciate you, sir. I'm going to stop the recording here, guys. Feel free to hang out for a little bit if you want to shoot the breeze. Appreciate.
Coach, were you at